Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second monthly meeting of the Richmond Selectboard, this being Tuesday, February 18th. We're meeting on Tuesday due to the holiday yesterday, President's Day. Before we begin, would anybody care to make a public comment? Josh?
Thanks, David. Just wanted to make a comment that our new police chief was supposed to start today, but we've delayed his start date mutually agreed upon until next Tuesday. Just wanted to update the public on that.
What's that date?
That is February 25th.
Thank you, Josh. Matt, I see your hand up. Is this up for public comment?
I was just hoping, I didn't know the right exact time to do this, if we possible to move agenda items around, so potentially I don't have to participate for the whole meeting. I've got some other things I have to deal with. So I was just hoping to do that, but I don't know if that's possible or not.
Matt, forgive me, which item did you?
It's the ethics violation
Oh, okay.
complaint.
H. Item H.
Oh, okay. Josh, Board, any objections to moving that up on the agenda? And if so, where would you suggest?
And my only caution would be if somebody was looking to join for that discussion and logging on later, they would miss it if we moved it up. But I do see this person that made the complaint is here.
10 minutes, 10 minutes.
Is David Sunshine here?
So are we expecting David or Tyler or anyone?
Probably not Tyler, but maybe David. So I don't know. That's my only concern ever with moving agenda items around is if people were sort of planning on attending a little bit later, but you can do as you wish.
What's the will of the board?
No preference. Guess I'm indifferent. Yeah, answer is it's fine with me.
It doesn't look like it'll be too long, Matt.
Ooh,
Can we commit to trying to move through A through G expeditious?
Yeah, I will say when David and I put the agenda together, part of our strategy was to try to put a few items that might go fairly quickly, but involve people from the outside attending up front so that we could kind of go through that. The strategy, not that it maybe matters to Matt, but I thought that ethics might take a little bit longer and the capital plan might take a little bit longer, but everything before that I thought was somewhat quick to move through. We'll see if the reality proves me to be correct or not.
Yeah, and this is a second meeting that I'm having to attend. It's a continuation, so I'm just would hope that it could be dealt with in the beginning or near the beginning. But if people don't think that's possible, so be it, I guess.
we stick to the agenda, but if David Sunshine pops in, we can.
Move it up?
Yeah, that way if he pops in early, there's no reason we can't shuffle it at that point.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Flexible.
That work, Matt?
Yeah, that works for me. Thank you.
So Josh, Board, any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Okay. Josh, Board, and especially Lisa, I am on call and I do have a couple of significant things going on, so I might have to duck out. Okay, moving on. Items for presentation. Reminder of town meeting, Tuesday, March 4th. And the informational meetings, Monday, February 24th at 7 p.m. This is the second informational meeting, so it should be informational meeting. That's in this room, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just an announcement, our town clerk, Linda Parent, is retiring.
Actually, I just wanted to make a couple other.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
First agenda item. So just as a continuation of a general reminder that the budget is being voted on by Australian ballot this year. It will not be an in-person vote. Ballots are not being mailed to everyone. Residents can request a ballot be mailed to them by contacting the town clerk. Early voting has begun and is being held at the town center when the town clerk's office is open. That's Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4, and on Fridays, 8 to noon. Early voting will end on Friday, February 28th at noon. All ballots must be returned by this date as well. And in-person voting will be at Camel's Hump Middle School on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Just wanted to kind of state a few things. I know that this year there's a number of changes on the budget voting procedure, so I wanted to make sure everybody was just another way to remind people.
Thanks, Josh. Just an announcement, Town Clerk Linda Parent's retirement party is tomorrow, Wednesday, February 19th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at Stone's Throw Pizza. The public is welcome to come, and we all want to thank Linda for her 20-plus years of service to the town and wish her the best on the next chapter of her life.
And we'll have some cake and pizza for everybody who wishes to attend, and say thank you to Linda.
Okay. Next, we have the discussion of the transition of duties from the current town clerk to who will be our newly elected town clerk. Josh, did you want to lead this discussion?
Sure. I'll pull up an item to share, so give me a moment. So at the last meeting, we talked a bit about Linda's willingness to stay on for a number of weeks to help with the transition of the new town clerk, noting that both candidates have not done this type of work before, and there's certainly a lot to learn from Linda. Just wrapping up the election itself is going to be probably challenging and involved, as they usually are. The board would ask me to reach out to both candidates to ask what their preference would be and if they had to give notice of jobs, and then to come back with a document that would sort of summarize potential plan for Linda to stay on. So one candidate currently doesn't have a current job, so they could start actually relatively quickly. The other candidate would need to give 2 weeks notice in order to then transition over here. But they both expressed a willingness to have a very smooth transition and learn as much as they can from Linda in the interim and have her there to help out. So I shared that with Linda. We talked about trying to set it up so that she would typically stay on until the end of March, but also noting that perhaps after a couple of weeks, the incoming clerk might say, I don't need you 40 hours a week. We could maybe reduce that. Oh, sorry. A little bit. So Linda could supplement that with some leave time and be here for a reduced number of hours for that time if that need be. So I'll share in the packet things that I wrote up. We do still have another crack at this. If this doesn't look quite right, we can come back at the March 3rd meeting. Sorry, let me get back to where I'm at. There we go. So kept it fairly short.
Bart?
And this, just to be clear, this does work out cleanly through March 31st is really 4 weeks, right?
And so maybe a day or two more,
Yeah.
but it's pretty close.
Right.
And so this sort of summarizes everything I just talked about, or states that did want to make sure that we included that her health benefits would continue through the end of March as well. That's something that is important to Linda.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Seems simple and straightforward.
We ready for a motion?
This is Bard, motion to approve the document concerning the extension of town clerk Linda Parent's employment.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, aye. Lisa, aye.
Bard, aye.
David, aye. Motion carries, documents approved. Next is discussion of next steps for the Andrews Community Forest Trail Plan.
Are you guys here to talk to that item?
We are. Chase is, should I go get Chase?
Maybe.
Chase is in the Trails Committee.
Okay.
Oh, so good.
Thank you. Does this happen in Congress, you think?
I know.
You're in one committee, you gotta go to the other.
Oh,
committee.
yeah.
Farther apart, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like a mile away.
Warmer in here.
Yeah, it's warm in there.
Thank you for leaving the trails.
Like French doors, we can just open and combine the two. Yeah. We'll add it to the town center committee list. Movable wall.
Okay,
So we
so we're at the agenda item for the Inch Community Forest Committee, where you guys are seeking some guidance on how to proceed. So we want you to brief the select board on that request and get some feedback.
Yeah, so we've been working on both updating the management plan. There is an existing management plan that we have, and also trying to really hone in on what a trail plan can look like, and make some definitive steps to getting the community some trails and a trail plan. And there are a couple ways that we can see getting this to you all as the owners that would check off on any trail plan and revised management plan. And one would be to have a trail plan that we vote on and give that to you, and then you would look at that independent of the management plan, and it would become an appendix in the management plan. And so that would allow us to move ahead with the whatever next steps there would be, whether it was working with zoning or any of the other steps towards actually being able to make a trail. The other way that we've talked about doing it is finishing the revisions of the whole management plan, which would include a trail plan, and delivering that to you all as a whole revised document. And so, yeah, we had been going back and forth, and Tyler recommended asking you what you all wanted as the people who would be checking off on this.
I have a couple of follow-up questions just to help frame this. So how does this come to us? Is this like was this question A or B, a proposal voted on by the committee, or a separate vehicle or process?
It actually was a recommendation from Tyler Mesha, who has been in our last couple of meetings. He saw us struggling with trying to figure out what the product that you'd want to see. We were discussing, well, we think we should do this and that, and it came back to, why don't you just ask them what they want to see? And yeah, and so we're seeking guidance.
Well, Mike, one drives the other. I assume the management plan drives the trail plan, but the trail plan is a specific input. Go ahead.
Thank
All
you.
right, let me take.
My follow-up question is, so if we think of this, the original documents governing Andrews Community Forest, if I recall correctly, were all of these things together packaged in a management plan. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So the question is, do we continue as originally envisioned with a management plan, and associated with that, is it fair to say things like a trail plan, a wildlife stewardship plan, and a trail stewardship plan and other elements are part of, shall I say, an ecosystem, that they impact each other?
Yeah.
So in that regard, it strikes me that that was, if there was wisdom, a wisdom of the original management plan to look at the ecosystem of the different elements together, since they would impact each other in a single management plan. And that was, I think, the original vision. And so if we're going to change it, I guess the question is, what are the benefits of doing that ahead of the other elements of the plan, which then it would strike me, if you do one first, all the other plans have to then be congruent with the first one without having done them all at the same time. So does that make sense?
Yeah. And I guess to clarify, the way I'm seeing these two options is in either version, the trail plan would be informed by all the other pieces. We're just thinking in terms of, in my mind, it's would it allow us to go ahead and look at what next steps needed to be taken to get a trail to the community? Rather than waiting for other parts of the document. And at the same time, we'd keep working on the document after that simultaneously with like figuring out whatever needed to happen with trails.
It sounds like they're gonna happen in parallel somewhat, in either way, but it would be a presentation. So is there, I don't know how to word this, is there, is there anything that needs to change in the trail plan and or the management plan to facilitate the other one as they stand now, or is it reasonable to come up with a decent trail plan based on the current management plan that would not become obsolete? I guess I wouldn't want you guys to be doing work.
I mean, to be totally honest, it's the trail plan has been pretty contentious. And
Really?
there are, yeah, I mean, I think it'll probably come down to a vote and we'll live with however that works. And
Follow-up question, would it make it seems to me that it would make sense to do that separately, so it's not derailing the entire management plan process, or is that, do I have that backwards? I mean,
It's an integral part.
I don't know, but I just wanted a point of clarity. There are 2 points, at least 2 votes, are there not? There's a vote of the committee, and then the select board by statute has responsibility for town lands, including a community forest. So any vote of the Andrews Community Forest Committee, I understand, is advisory to the select board.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess
That's on.
we're saying we want to get something to you. And would you like to see the whole revised plan? Or a trail plan first and then the revised plan a couple months later?
Can I speak?
Yeah, sorry.
In my experience with not stuff like this, but other things, it's best usually to go from the general to the specific, because it will form itself as you go. And then when you reach a point where the product is usable, then you go to the next topic. And same thing, general to the specific, and then see if they merge at some point where they're all to some degree of development. And if not, you back up and do it again. You probably have some back and forth on these, but I think the trail plan it's essential to the management plan, obviously. And it can't really be developed in a vacuum, but it's going to have to proceed to some point where you can then see how it meshes with the other elements and make progress on those. I know you've been through this several times anyway, so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, I would take your advice on how it should go, but that's just my opinion on if I was starting from scratch.
My question is, what was the conversation at the committee itself? Did the committee unanimously say, yeah, proceed with the trail plan first and management plan second? Or?
I would say I perceive our committee as pretty divided on whether the management plan should detail every last thing that could possibly happen in the forest in the future. And I think in concept, everyone agrees to that, but the reality of that is that it's really tedious. And if we were really doing it right, we'd be voting on 100 different things. And we're 6 years into this and we haven't given the town a trail. Like, as the trails representative, I get feedback constantly saying, what are you doing? We've been waiting. Is it going to be another year? And so I think no one is interested in skirting the science and the information that we have. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in the wildlife stewardship plan, in the trail stewardship plan. So that's all, we're all aware of it and want, like, in good faith, want to use it. We're just wondering I personally am at the point where I don't have faith that we're going to get the whole management plan revised in a timeline that meets what's reasonable, but others don't agree with me.
If you've been working on it, hasn't this been clear for 6 years? I mean, the guidelines for the committee and the Andrews Community Forest, how long have they been in existence? 6 years? 5 years? So I'm wrestling with some of this because while I understand there are advocates, let's get the trail built. You'll note in my candidate statement that one of my goals is to represent all the residents of the town. And frankly, in my view, that includes the current residents of the Andrews Community Forest. who don't vote. The flora and fauna that happen to live there are also residents of our. And so I'm just wrestling with, while I appreciate the enthusiasm and frustration about the delay of the trail plan, but we've also talked about over the years about, well, how do the existing roads fit in or not fit in? There have at times in the past been maps presented that seem to like ignore the presence of the existing roads in the forest. And so I've just looked for sort of transparency and how the different parts of this intersect with each other. And typically what we would hope for from a committee is some sort of majority opinion versus, you know, we're stuck.
Yeah.
And so I feel a little stuck because I'm not clear enough on the pros and cons of each, other than the trail plan. If you do that first and start building the trails, then the other things have to fall in place behind it. But if I consider that the Andrews Community Forest is an ecosystem that includes wildlife and wildlife stewardship, I'm wrestling with how a trail plan coming first before the wildlife stewardship plan, how they would mesh at a future date. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I guess to clarify, I don't think anyone on the committee is interested in ignoring the wildlife stewardship plan. I guess it would be an act of good faith on your part saying, if you need a little more time to finish the revisions of the management plan, great. And maybe it's us coming up with like us voting and saying, what do we recommend? And so I think we're all appreciating the work and really aware of wanting to like strike a very good balance with preservation and recreation, and are taking a really mindful approach. We're just wondering what you want to see as a path forward.
Tell me if it's true or not, that there seems to be an urgency around trail management because there's degradation, there's people, you know, maybe unlawfully, but using trails, cutting trails, what have you. There seems to be some, the opposite of progress going on in the Andrews Community Forest that needs to be addressed sooner than later. Is that?
I don't know of anyone. I mean, we maintain the trails that are there. There's like a limited number of trails down low. I haven't heard of anyone cutting a trail.
Okay, well, maybe I've heard wrong then, because
Yeah.
that to me would be urgent then. That would move the trails plan up higher to get an arm around that.
Yeah.
And steer it the other direction, but sit it the wrong way. But if that's not a problem, that's reassuring.
Right?
I'm on the Trails Committee as well. We've made, I think, a lot of progress over the last 2 or 3 months on the management plan. And we had a special meeting last week before last, and that's all we did. And I think we're making good progress on the management plan. And to me, and I support trails, we've got to focus on the management plan that'll drive the trail decisions we make in the future. So I would, I hope we have the energy, continue to have the energy to focus on the management plan and get it right and get it done in a timely fashion, because we're making good progress. And we haven't always been in that position, but now we are. So, and it's not easy. It's reading and drafting and reading and drafting, working through it.
I guess to add one more clarification, we do have a current management plan that we're updating. We don't have a current trail plan. There's a concept trail plan. So and we're going to create a trail plan using the info we have. We already have a management plan that's going to improve with time.
Just really quickly, Brad Elliott. Adam, to answer your question, since that management plan was written, there's a lot of new research that's been done, both in the forest by UVM, by Airwood, the environmental people. So we know more about the forest than we used to. And then there's a lot of outside research into some key things like the impact of recreation on nearby wildlife. Just to clarify, Chase has mentioned the wildlife stewardship plan. That's still in draft form. We really haven't discussed that yet. We should, I think, at some point. And finally, the original management plan, the one we're under, says that trails not appearing on the trail concept map shall not be approved for construction until a new trail concept map is adopted through a full revision of the management plan. So the trail concept map they're talking about there is the original one. The consultants came forth with a plan that departed from that so radically, it kicked us into, quote, a full revision of the management plan. We're about due for an update anyway. There were some, grammar and some other issues in the plan. It's kind of long, so there are ways we probably would have wanted to improve it anyway, just the way it reads. But we have new knowledge these days, and I think that's going to be that would be included. So I'm in favor of, we keep referring to this as the cart before the horse issue, of letting the horse drive this thing, letting the management plan drive a trail plan or trail concept plan even, and not jumping into one and then trying to, back the management plan to conform to the trail plan. And I agree with Wright. We were, a couple of weeks ago, we were right on the verge of tackling what we also refer to as the elephant in the room. There's a mountain biking trail to the north. And we had to end the meeting, but that's where we're going to pick up next time. And the committee, up to the tone of that is so much better than previous ones do. So thanks a lot, to Chase and everybody on the committee. We just get along really well and are able to talk.
Recording in progress.
I guess. I didn't realize that was kind of the driving factor was here in the original management plan and how it was written. So I guess it does make sense to do the management plan first in my mind, but I will say, counter to Bard's point or the opposite is like representing everyone. And I've heard from tons of people that they honestly, the term I keep hearing is they're sold a bill of goods. We bought this and they want to use it with their kids, and my kids are going to be 16 by the time there's a trail I can go on to the whatever. So I think that it does need to be done in a concerted method. So my question is it reasonable to have a management plan and trail plan back in front of the select board with, some draft of that within a year completed? Or is that a completely astronomical goal?
Yeah, I mean, I
I
guess,
don't know. I know there's been ups and downs.
yeah, I think a year, we would love to get something to the community this outdoor season, coming spring, summer season. And we have all the info there. We need to vote on what we feel good presenting to you all and then live with however the vote.
I was gonna say, right or wrong, a few months.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
3 months at latest.
For a whole management plan, like at least a draft management plan that or something along those lines.
Yeah, and I think us having a committed deadline to get that to you would be a great start for us.
I will say in my mind, it seems like having adopted this as the select board, it sits now, obviously one member, possibly different. I would want to do that before the town meeting next year. Is like that would be my drop dead date, but months in this summer I think is reasonable if that's a trajectory that you think you can hold as a committee and work to. I mean, so I guess I don't have a specific date in mind, but I also shouldn't have said a year, because if you had said 3 months, I would love to hold you to.
Yeah, I think we're holding ourselves to 2 to 3 months at this point.
David, what if we said, come back and pick a date 3 months and either with the plan or a date on when you think you will have a plan? And to this point, I've heard the same thing, Adam, about frustration about trails. And this is one of the issues that comes up when people have different values and perspectives. There are people for whom the Andrews Community Forest is a trail system. There are other people for whom Andrews Community Forest is not a trail system. It is something else. And since they are all our residents, and I'm not even yet mentioning the other flora and fauna that are resident there and have lived there for ostensibly thousands of years. That there are these different perspectives, and it's from where I sit, it's not that they're right or wrong, they're just different.
Yeah.
You know, two different people going to a restaurant will order different things and both come away happy, but they want what they want from that restaurant at that time. So
Yeah,
the trail is clearly
It's
one
more
of
down
the
to
seven
committees,
pieces.
challenges and.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I think the hard thing is that we've kind of gotten siloed into being perceived as these two sides where if you want trails in there, you don't also want 90% of the whole forest to be conserved. And so I think a lot of people are obviously disengaged at this point. And I get frustrated too. I'm like, have a background in ecology, but I'm the trails person now. And often feel like I'm fighting against the things that I like studied, you know?
Yes.
Just because the balance, the conversation around balance doesn't resonate as much. So anyway, I push back against the polarity of the two. camps.
And I think that's proper. I'll just call out one theme that came up in a similar context in a very recent meeting. And it was interesting because I used the word resident. This person in our public meeting said their opinion is we need to separate resident benefits from non-resident benefits. And seriously, you can't make this stuff up. I had several years ago, people from other towns telling me we should close Cochran Road part of the time for recreational use. They don't even live in Richmond.
Right.
But it illustrates the perspective, and I don't throw them under the bus. It's like for them, Cochran Road is about recreation and these vehicles are in the way. For other people, Cochran Road is a way of getting somewhere quickly. For yet other people, it's where they live. And both of those other groups might be annoying to them at times. So my point is that there could be different perspectives, and I think we should be able to accept that people have different priorities and values and approach this differently. And so at least for me or for us, I think our goal should be to how do we accommodate the balance between all those interests? And
What is it?
Well,
What's a good compromise mean? No
one's entirely. And there are people who are adamant, I gotta have this. It's like, well, as soon as there's the gotta haves, it doesn't bode well sometimes for compromise or collaboration. I don't care what you want, I gotta have this is not I guess it's a popular negotiating strategy in the White House at the moment. In a lot of the rest of the world, it's not considered, an effective approach.
So I drive by it twice a day, usually, the parking area. And sometimes there's no cars there, but there's often cars there with people doing a whole bunch of different things in the woods. Whether it's cross-country skiing or that's what's going on now, or snowshoeing or some biking, tons of hunting. The forest is getting a fair amount of use, not tons of use, but use every day.
And so the frustration is really if you're mountain biking, you want maybe a certain kind of trail or certain connections. And I don't know where we'll end up with roads, trails, like how many, where, but I appreciate that. And full disclosure, when I first started, my first mountain bike was the mid-80s. The only choice was logging roads, and you had to figure out how to get over trees that were across the road because there was no one else. Where else were you gonna run it? There's no such thing as a mountain bike.
I have an 80s Vermont mountain bike guide and it's all logging roads.
Yeah, there you go.
And the work roads at ski areas,
Yeah.
that's divide.
So, I mean, it sort of puts me in time. I appreciate we've come a long way. Since then, I've also ridden a mountain bike in Germany, and I gotta tell you, the Germans are really good at making trails.
Yeah.
And have been for 150 years.
Yeah.
Literally.
So would it be reasonable to shoot for a draft management plan, either like May 19th or June 2nd select board meeting, or is that?
Yeah.
That's like about 3.
Definitely. I think
so.
May 19th. I think we can
I would say June, but.
You wanna go for June? Okay, we can always beat
We
the
want to be
date.
successful.
June 2nd gives you an extra meeting too,
Right.
to get to us. That
Yeah.
gives you a whole-
Okay,
So shoot
We
shoot
might
for June
wanna
2nd.
run it by the conservation commission. Might be a good idea, and trails. See what they think.
I think we'll do June 2nd, and then, do you guys need input from those committees to do your thing? How does that work? How do these all interact?
I think we have representatives.
Okay.
So
So I'll let you
I think Trails would say you can represent us.
defer to get your representatives on board with that, or tell them. If
Yeah.
they have specific concerns and we need to revise that, then they need to have a good reason.
Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. So the plan would be for the committees. I'm actually the RCC representative for ACFC. So the plan would be to have that feedback before the June date. So we would finish the plan or the draft of the plan, send it off to the other committees for feedback, and then bring it to you guys.
Yes.
I guess I hadn't really personally hadn't thought of that nuance of the process. I was thinking it would be a draft plan from the Andrews Community Forest. So yeah, I guess that if that's the process, then that was what I had in mind.
I don't think that there's a set in stone process, but I know that there are members of those committees that would love to be able to offer their advice to the management plan. I think that at least for RCC, we had discussed it, and RCC was sort of waiting for ACFC to solicit feedback because obviously this process has been slow. There's a lot of voices, and so it seems like it would be better to let ACFC work and then to solicit advice, before it goes to the next phase, rather than people trying to butt in and make their, comments while the, draft isn't even complete yet. So there is not really a process as far as I know.
What do you guys think works?
So to clarify, Sam, are you talking about soliciting feedback from
RCC and RTC and RCC,
Okay,
not from the public.
Yeah.
Although I imagine that's part of the process as well.
I guess
but-
this whole revision process started right after our last public feedback gathering meeting. So it really is a culmination of all that public feedback. So sending it back to the public again.
To be clear, I think the June 2nd is obviously like a draft plan. I don't think that we as a board are gonna vote on anything at that point. And we're not gonna adopt a plan on June 2nd. I assume there would be a little bit of a review of it quick, brushing it up, and then another meeting 2 or 4 weeks later to formally adopt a plan. Best case scenario, I think. I don't know. Am I way off base on that? That's kind of what I had in mind, but I don't.
Well, I'll just say if it's been 5 or 6 years, if we can get 5 or 6 months, that seems like.
Shooting for the stars. So.
Okay.
So shoot for June 2nd.
Yeah.
If you can solicit feedback, that would be great. And if you feel like you need more time, then bring us what you have and tell us what you need.
Melissa, go ahead.
Just for your information in reviewing a draft of a management plan, the document is more than 30 pages long with many appendices. So as far as the select board reviewing it, you'll need some time to look through it. Much of the meat of what you'll want to see is within the document. So it will take you a bit of time to look through it.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
We will have to do our homework, I guess, on that one.
Anything else? Okay, moving on.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good job on progress too, by the way. It's
Consideration of approval of the request to close a portion of Cochran Road on Saturday, May 17th for the children's bike ride portion of the Richard's Pride event.
Hello, I'm Karen Ward. I live here in Richmond and I'm on the board of directors of the Cochran Foundation. And my name is Rachel Ciancola and I'm also on the board and I work here. Yes,
Speaking of closing Cochran Road.
I know, what we were like. Yeah. Only for 2 hours, 11 to 1. We have kids who last year, a lot of the river trail was closed last year. So they were zigzagging through the pavement. So we are hopeful to have more of the river trail up and running this year. Already Richardson Foundation has a meeting scheduled next month with the Richmond Mountain Trails people to help get that trail up and running, so we'll have fewer children actually on the road.
I forget how many years you guys have been doing this.
I know, it's so funny, that was like the one thing I didn't write down, but I feel like this is, I think this is 8. This is 8 or 9.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bart?
So what we usually ask about is, plans, how many people, start date, start time, finish time, plans for police or emergency
Yeah.
services. I think
Notify
talk
them.
about those for the
Notify the people that live on Cochran Road.
Yes, all those things we have in place because we've been doing it for a while now. So we have all the spreadsheets. And in the past, we've worked with Linda and we'll work with someone new and get the addresses, and then we send everyone a letter. The other things we do is we post signs in local businesses. We put signs out on the road like a week before. And then many weeks before, we get a front porch 4 of them and let everybody know that it's happening. The event is technically from 7 a.m. to like 4 p.m. But the actual children's ride is 11 to 1. And that's being really generous, thinking that some of them are pretty slow, but in the past, we have had cleared it sooner and the police officers have opened the road. And in the past, with talking to the officers who have worked there, they've had nothing but really positive comments about people are really respectful. They totally get it. It's all about keeping kids safe, for sure. The other people that work with us are the Richmond Rescue. They are there, they teach CPR, not like the legit CPR certification, but whatever that next level down is that can still save someone. So they're on board and off board. We've been doing this event, as I've mentioned, for a few years. And, because the event is staggered, it's not one big group of people, but there are about 200 total
Oh, wow.
that will hang out at Cochran. Cochran is a sponsor, Stone Corral is a sponsor, Class 4 Design, they're here in Richmond also, and Untapped. Some other Richmond businesses that we're working with. And this is our big fundraiser. It's kind of our only fundraiser. 2 weeks ago, we did a fat bike rally and we made like $150, but donated all, and then we donated it right back to the outdoor center. And that was mostly on burgers. So this is the biggest fundraiser for us, and it's really important because we're able to give back to the biking community by getting more kids on bikes. We've donated over 150 bikes already, as an organization. We've sent a bunch of kids to summer camp at Catamount Outdoor Family Center. We'd love to get some Richmond kids. We haven't really connected with that crew. We work with Little Bellas. And my favorite program is what we do with Old Spokes Home that's in Burlington. There's a group that they have, the Multicultural Youth Apprenticeship, and we give them the money and the bikes, and they teach kids how to fix the bikes. And then they graduate, and then they are sort of hired back as apprentices with Old Spokes Home so that they can teach other kids how to fix bikes. So that's another place where a lot of the money goes, and that's why this event is really important to us.
Any questions?
No. Move to approve the closure of Cochran roads from Cochran ski area to Dudley Road. From 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 17th, 2025 for the children's bike ride portion of the Richard's Ride event.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Bart. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling for a vote on the motion.
Adam, I.
Lisa,
Bart, aye.
David, I thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Come and ride with us.
Yeah.
The weather's good.
You too. A little warmer today is really all we're looking for.
Hope it won't snow.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is consideration of setting a date for a public hearing for amendments to the flood hazard overlay district in the Richmond zoning regulations.
We have Keith here to probably give you a quick overview of this.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Buenas noches. we're looking to have a public hearing date set by the select board for the flood hazard overlay districts for the relocation of park equipment down on Volunteers Green. We also provided basically a sign off from the state on this. They seem to be satisfied that we're following the NFIP guidelines, and all we're basically looking for is either a date set for 4/7 or 4/21, April 7th or April 21st. And that gives me, once you settle on the date, that gives me the time to gather everything up and send it all out to the state and set the public hearings for you folks. And you should have gotten a quick note from Virginia on this, basically getting us from the beginning to where we are tonight. And that's all I got at this point.
What are we? I mean, I guess we don't know what's going on in those meetings, so.
Mhm.
Well, obviously knowing that you can't predict how long it'll take, Keith, you must have some sense. Is this going to, do you envision this being a 10, 15 minute, 1 hour or a 4 hour process? What's your order of magnitude estimate?
I don't think there's much controversy associated with this, to be honest with you. It's a pretty straightforward process as far as what you want to get done. The process to get to the point where you want to get done is a totally different story, and we've done that already. So everything will be handed to you on a silver platter. I would say give us half an hour.
Sounds reasonable. I think it's not an open-ended discussion anymore. It's about these issues in your
It's
letter.
true.
So.
All the
It's
info is there.
focused.
We're looking at a proposal. It's not
Any
open.
questions you have, either yes, no, or and here's why.
I guess I would just assume get it out of the way earlier then to
Right.
keep the process moving.
Mhm.
Keith, does that work for you? You've proposed 2 dates. You don't have any
Yep.
preference between the two?
The 4/7 would be fine. That's more than fine.
All right, I move to hold a public hearing for amendments to the flood hazard overlay district in Richmond zoning regulations on April 7th, 2025 at 7 PM.
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the vote to motion to a vote.
Adam, aye.
Lisa, aye.
Bard, aye.
David, I. Motion carries.
Thank you, folks. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Next is consideration of appointing a select board member to serve on the subcommittee for the development of the town plan.
Keith, since
Well, I'll
you're
stick
present,
around for this.
give the 30-second elevator pitch on this one.
Yeah, we're looking to set up a steering committee. And I think we discussed this a little bit last week when I was sitting next to you, David. It's a committee to help us guide dates that we can set up programming and outreach specifically. And that's really the long and the short of it. I'm making sure, bear with me here. Yeah, so because the select board has quite a bit of a responsibility with the town plan, it would behoove a member of said board to be on this steering committee.
No, we're on the town plan steering committee. I'm not looking for a member of
Oh, I
the select
skipped an
board.
extra
to
one. Sorry,
join
Keith.
that committee.
I crossed off an extra item. Jumping the gun. Okay. I know what we're talking about now.
Yeah, me too.
We're glad someone does. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to hold off to the next meeting to appoint somebody, the committee's not up and running. We just wanted to begin the process at this point. We could probably give you a better, a quick surmise of what we're exactly looking to do.
Just a suggestion, David, et cetera, that given that we'll have a different select board here and potentially different organization in a few weeks. Should we take this up after town meeting day? Is that too late? If not, there's 3 of us present here today, and is anybody particularly interested in being that liaison?
I'm interested in it, but I between with the town center and library committee and kids and all that stuff, can't commit to it.
I can speak sort of theoretically without committing to something. I was considering rejoining the planning commission. I mean, after this, it's illegal for me to be on it right now, but not that I'm going to do that or wouldn't do that, but that's also not a select board member on the planning commission at that point. But I think there's a legal space between, select board and planning commission that's there for a reason. And appointing a select board member to be a liaison, I don't know, is probably necessary. Maybe we should go through Josh.
Can we wait a few weeks, Keith?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because there are two members of the future select board who are not here tonight.
I will say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Keith.
I'm sorry, that didn't even dawn on us, to be honest with you. That there was an election, how that affected.
I will say from like being on the planning commission and then on the select board and having those things come to the select board, it was definitely helpful to have known all the background and work through that with the select board. It was helpful. So obviously there's the constraint of not having a select board member be a member of the planning commission, but either having a subcommittee or a liaison where they're up on all this stuff while not voting on the subcommittee stuff. Seems like it would be pretty advantageous, especially considering the magnitude of this rewrite compared to the other smaller ones we've been doing. So
This was the third one.
I think we table it when we have the full new select board, but having one person that's also an expert on all this stuff being the select board seems helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
And Lisa, to your question, and Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're gonna look for at least 2 or 3 community members to be on the subcommittee. So if you were interested after the select board service to serve in that committee, I think they probably will.
If that could be helpful, then, it's up to them,
But there's not a select board seat, so you could talk with Keith about those
I have
opportunities.
all this free time, so I gotta do something.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, this will take up your time.
Yeah. There's definitely gonna be a good amount of reading and research on this for sure, but pretty important project. Okay.
Okay, so we'll pick it up as a new board.
Great,
Next.
thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Yep.
Next, let's follow up on complaint of ethics violation. Josh, did you want to lead this discussion?
Sure, I can kind of introduce it. So at the last meeting, we spent a good amount of time discussing the complaint of ethics violation that was brought for one of the December meetings from the DRB. There was a lot of question about was the sketch plan review an official act, and if so, or based on that determination, does it fall under a need for recusal based on the ethics policy that was in place at the time, which was the the town's ethics policy. The board wanted me to reach out to both the state committee as well as our town attorney to try to get some feedback. The state said that they couldn't speak to the policy that was in place at the time because they can only speak to the current state policy. Their advice there, and I've included these in the packet, but to summarize, they said the question of recusal doesn't center on the definition of an official act. The question is whether the official has a direct or indirect interest in the outcome of a particular matter pending before the officer on the officer's public body. If so, then recusal must be complete. Complete means that the official has no further involvement in the issue, which would include even informal conversations about the issue with the remaining decision makers. The town attorney tended to agree with the idea that this is not an official act because it's not a formal proceeding, not quite a true quasi judicial proceeding, which is a binding decision that has appealable at the end. It doesn't quite meet the definition of an official act under the code. So
That's
leave
a
it there.
big distinction, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That takes the legal problems out of it, really.
David, I'll just make the point that the Vermont State Ethics Commission Executive Director in her email of February 6th makes reference to the statewide municipal code of ethics, which for the record became effective January 1st, 2025.
Right, and this was for an act that occurred prior to that.
So I'm finding that guidance to a subsequent statute not as helpful as I would otherwise find it.
Sure, the only reason it might be helpful is guidance for, were that to occur today,
Yes.
how would we perceive if the ethics complaint at that point? But could not be held to that standard for something that occurred back in December.
I think that's precisely correct. It's not helpful going backward in time, but it is helpful going forward in time.
You know, if the Development Review Board just simply read one of these, if they're about to embark on a discussion of a
Anything.
yeah, anything that's requiring sharing information for people that may be in the community, whatever, just to read something. Maybe put everybody on notice to be thinking in that vein. Doesn't seem like that's been happening.
And also have a conversation about, I don't know if this is a conflict of interest, but just so you know, this happened. I had conversation with so-and-so said, pardon?
So that is a feature of the January 1st Code of Ethics, that there's a general expectation that at the beginning, people who have a potential conflict of interest or a real conflict of interest disclose it.
Right.
And it can be open then to discussion prospectively as opposed to retrospectively. So moving forward, that is more the expectation for all of our sort of governmental entities, including this one. If we do have a conflict of interest, we're expected to identify it publicly at the beginning of a conversation.
So can I
Go
read
ahead.
something? This is obviously from January 1st moving forward. I think this should inform, a conflict of interest can, there can be multiple interpretations of it. Legally, there is not. But I think what really should shape, everyone's threshold moving forward is this section. So it's, 16A, it's on page, let's just call it page, because it's not written well, laid out well, but it's on page 3 of the Code of Ethics under conflicts of interest. It says a duty to avoid conflicts of interest is a description. In municipal officer's official capacity, the officer shall avoid any conflict of interest or the appearance of conflict of interest. The appearance of conflict shall be determined from the perspective of a reasonable individual with no knowledge with knowledge of relevant facts. So it's very easy to have there be the appearance when there is no conflict. So I think that bringing stuff up in the beginning, no matter what the minimal or no conflict may exist, and having that discussion and coming to a conclusion as an individual or a board, however, and sticking to that consistently is going to be the most critical. Whether there's a conflict or not, if someone raises something that makes it appear like there is and it wasn't talked about, people will assume it's being brushed under the rug. That something's being hidden and done behind closed doors, or something is going on behind the scenes. If it's talked about, people can disagree with the position you took, but you took a position and it was out in the open and we can debate that. So
And
I
in
guess-
each case that I'm aware of, it's come before, select board, that's been the problem. Nobody kept the stuff quiet till it was revealed after the fact. You can't do
And I don't
it.
think anyone's done anything intentionally to do anything behind the scenes or anything like that. But when it's not talked about openly, 100%, and it's not addressed.
All right.
I'll also point out that the quotes in the February 6th email are somewhat problematic, because it refers to the question whether the official has a quote direct or indirect interest in the outcome of a particular matter pending before the officer or the officer's public body. That applies to lots of things, like we pay taxes here, so setting the budget and the tax rate, we have an interest in that as individual taxpayers. Andrew's Community Forest.
Everybody at the table has that.
Well, right, that's part of my point. Or Andrew's Community Forest, people show up because they have an interest.
Sure.
And so if you excluded anyone with any interest, you'd probably be left with nobody on the committee. So I think that is a little bit elusive, and I think it really then hinges on what do we mean by interest? Probably interest greater than another citizen? I'm not even sure though. The way it's written is
It's a good
pretty
point.
broad.
It is.
Well, that's the problem. I don't have it in front of me, but it's not measurable. And what might be a conflict of interest in my mind might not be a conflict of interest in your mind, which might
Okay.
not be a conflict of interest in your mind. Which is why I think the takeaway on this is if somebody perceives that there may be a conflict of interest, speak up, point it out, address it. So it's a known issue. And then there can be discussion on whether it is or isn't a conflict of interest, but it's at least acknowledged, discussed, and recognized.
I just make
Go ahead.
one reference to respond to Bart's question here. Just going to the current statewide policy, under conflict of interest here, I think it's on page 1, section 5, it says the conflict of interest does not include any interest that is not greater than that of other individuals generally affected by the outcome of a matter. So I think if you're looking at taxes will go up, they'll go up for everybody. Yours isn't necessarily greater. I guess if you have more property, maybe it's greater. If you're, so I don't know, an example might be, if you own a mountain biking company that intends to rent bikes at the trailhead of Andrews Community Forest, you might have a greater interest in trails there than the average citizen who could just go ride on them. But I think it's gonna be a little case by case, but there is at least somewhat of a definition.
But if it is brought up early,
Yeah.
at least people can make their own decision internally about, well, should I say this or not? And could, say it in interest of clarity. I hope they would. And if it didn't need to be said, so what?
So.
Matt, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in an effort to clarify things, I did bring it up at the beginning of that meeting that I wasn't a butter and that we had informal discussions about a boundary line adjustment. A boundary line adjustment is much different than them doing a subdivision. And I believe that Josh also has an email from the residents of the Village Hill condos who submitted that application, and it further clarifies that I had no part in that application whatsoever, and that I actually didn't even know about it. So I did actually at the beginning of that DRB meeting say I am in a butter, and I've had discussions with them in the past about a boundary line adjustment. But again, a boundary line adjustment is much different than a full subdivision. So I think it'd be worth, Josh, maybe you could share that email with them essentially, if you wanted.
Yeah, I think that came in today. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to really include that in the packet.
Bradley, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. Let me just put my hand on here. So Josh already addressed this, but real quickly on the point of Josh highlighted in the municipal code of ethics that about the interest not being greater than anyone else. I think there's I mentioned last time or previous time we talked about this topic that there is a training available now from the state. It's like 50 minutes long. If you haven't done that training yet, I definitely recommend it. It answers a lot of these questions, right? Like how to think about this, how to kind of go through that. So those sorts of questions, those nuances are addressed in that training. So definitely encourage any of the public officials who haven't already to take that training. Two other quick things. It would be helpful to see in Josh's emails, there's a reference to a memo from Tyler about the topic, but I didn't see that in the meeting material, so that would be helpful to see. I wasn't aware of this email from the Village Hill condo either, so that I agree, that'll be useful to see that as well. Just a couple of quick things about sort of the overall topic, though, is that this code of ethics in question here really is a policy written by and adopted by the select board. So it's unclear to me why you would need the town's attorney in the first place to interpret your own policy that you wrote, like what your intent was with that policy. As I said at the last meeting, what I'm really looking for here ultimately is to have a clear set of ethical standards that everyone understands and everyone follows. And I'd look to you as the select board to ultimately set and enforce those standards, right? Like what it is you want to see. So I just okay.
Yeah, you had called into question our adherence to our policy. So we asked really a third party, neutral third party, informed third party, our attorney, to explain it back to us. That's all. I mean, not that we don't know what it is, but an attorney always has something interesting to say.
Okay. but I would say at the end of the day, it is your job to set the tone, right? To set enforce and say, and be clear about what your intent ultimately is, right? So I think so for example, tonight with the decision that whatever conclusion you ultimately make tonight, I would think very carefully about the message you're sending with that decision. In this case, you have a DRB member who is a land developer and according to his own words, talks to people all the time about land development. This is a situation that's ripe for conflicts of interest. In this specific instance, he stated that he'd been in discussions with the condo association about a land transaction involving the lot in question. The minutes state that he was interested. I don't know why the minutes say this, but the minutes state that he was interested in actually purchasing the lot that would be, created as through the subdivision. So that's concerning. And after this, he did involve himself in the sketch plan review. Besides, regardless of having a clear, direct or indirect interest in the outcome of the matter pending before the officer's public body. So to me, the interest is clear. It seems like there's a clear interest here on his part. He's been in a conversation with him about purchasing either a boundary line adjustment or possibly the land resulting from the subdivision under review. So I would say with your decision, if you decide that there's no issue here, that you're giving a green light to continue to involve himself in reviews where he has a conflict of interest, and you're saying that you see no issues with this and that these sorts of conflicts of interest are business as usual. Similarly, you have another DRB member who practices land use law, among other areas of law, for many of Richmond's residents. And this is another situation that's ripe for conflicts of interest. In both these situations, from what I've witnessed, these DRB members need to be much more diligent than they have been about identifying and avoiding these conflicts of interest. So again, I'd look to you as a select board to really set and enforce the ethical standards for public officers and what it is you want to see. So I hope that, with whatever you state tonight, that you really send a message about what it is you'd like to see for an ethical standard. And if you don't do anything, then that also sends a message as well. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Bradley. Lisa, then Bart.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to remind everybody, including Bradley, that a lot of the quotations you've taken have been from public record of meetings or your presence at these meetings. So that seems to be working. We have a transcript of what happened. We have a public record of what people said about their intentions and so forth. Maybe it's not complete. You could always make the case there was more, wasn't said. But I think that's a pretty big effort on everyone's part right there that goes towards compliance with ethics. What's your opinion? What do you think?
Sorry, are you asking me or?
Yes, I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. So no, I think in terms of saying that there was a potential conflict here, having that conversation, I think that's certainly a positive thing. One of the things that's particularly concerning in this situation is that the minutes reflect something very different than what was said in the meeting. And it's still unclear why that is, and unclear which of those things are true, right? So I think there's a discrepancy between, if you watch the video and read the minutes, there are different things that were said there. And again, no clear answer as to why that discrepancy. It could just be a simple mistake. That's certainly possible, but so I think yeah, absolutely, to some extent there's a record of it, but it's also, there are discrepancies in that record which raise some questions. So
okay, well, there's two records then. I mean, one is the kind of Cliff Notes version, the other one is a complete word for word record, and most people will find the Cliff Notes version very informative, very helpful, and sufficient. You didn't, which is, you're right. And if every word was important, I'm not sure we can ever conduct a meeting and a discussion with every word being exactly correct.
But no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm just saying it's a very different thing to say that someone's interested in purchasing the land that would be created as a result of the subdivision that's under review, and to say that someone's involved in a land transaction that has nothing to do with that subdivision. And those are two very different statements. And that's what the difference is here. So.
Okay, well, my conclusion from this is the town is making a big effort to do things right. And if we slip, I don't mind being spanked for it. It's the spankings are for. But I do think we're making a big effort.
Until
and I
town
think we
meeting.
learn each time. Yeah, no, we don't.
Then it's someone else's bad.
So, but I think we're headed the right direction. Maybe we'll never get to the destination. exactly, but I hope you see that effort too, because we're making it.
Yeah, and I appreciate the conversation tonight too. I do think there are some of the things that I wanted to hear you talking about. I heard you talking about for sure. For me, the bigger picture is being clear with what your intent is and what you want to see from public officials, right? That's what I'm looking for here. Not, I think we could talk about what happened, what didn't happen, but I think for me, the bigger picture is like I said, having a clear set of ethical standards that you are clear on and that you've communicated clearly to town officials.
So it strikes me that the pursuit of ethics and the avoidance of conflicts of interest is a journey, perhaps more than a destination. I also note that our current policy, if I understand it correctly, was approved in 2019 and amended in 2023. In light of statutory changes effective January 1st, does this merit review and potential modification? Among other things, I was thinking we might point out, include something that members of boards and commissions should take the state training. So I think there could at least be some sort of pragmatic features that we could insert. And then also maybe scan the new statute and talk about or consider, are there any additional changes? And then I'd also say, one of the things we could do is use the same font throughout the document.
So, so we did talk about that a bit at the last meeting, where the statewide ethics policy only covers certain committees and certain employees, and the previous policy covered all committees, all volunteers, all employees. I was working with our attorneys to try to combine the state one so that it applied to everybody, and also had a reporting and an enforcement section. I wasn't quite able to get that done for this meeting, but I think I might be able to by the March 3rd meeting. And then the idea will be, we'll have one policy for everybody, and we'll have everybody take the training, and we'll have everybody adhere to the same policy. It just is taking a little bit longer to get there.
I think that's the appropriate next step, sort of how do we get ahead of this and pursue compliance with the current, perhaps more rigorous expectations of state statute.
Adam?
Oh, I was gonna echo what Bart said. First about, I don't think this is something that we finish. I think this is an ongoing process, and
it should be.
Unless we decide to be wholly unethical, we will always be pursuing ethics, and that's well, that definition is gonna be different for everyone in every situation. So and then I guess the second part I would say is holding, we can hold ourselves accountable in committees, but there's obviously 3,300 registered voters in Richmond, over 4,000 people, and everyone's perception is going to be different. So part of that, no matter how robust our ethics policy and implementation is at a committee level, is going to be community members such as yourself, Bradley, auditing this. And if you smell something that, or see something that you think, doesn't check out, that is going to be part of it, is to raise that concern. So that's not to shirk our responsibility, but just to say that I think that is going to be a critical part of this. And so I guess partly thank you, and setting the example. And then I hope that continues too. And I hope anyone that sees something comes forward. I guess the last thing I was going to say, should we make it an official part of the policy that an annual training is completed?
I think we should.
Those trainings are available. I just sent the link to the select board, just the actual, like if you click on it, it'll bring you to the one that's applicable to us. It would be a different link for, I think, Josh, for anyone that is an employee of the town. There's 2 different links. So it's very easily available. I think that setting that requirement is kind of the bare minimum we can do.
And I think,
And it's something specific that we can.
Exactly.
And it's helpful.
I think that's partially addressed in the policy, if I recall, that there's certain,
Is it?
everybody has to take a training at the beginning. And then I think there's some that take it every year, and there's timeframes for others. I forget the exact details of it.
Ours, I think we're required to take it at the beginning, right? But it doesn't say anything about the beginning of the term. It just says upon implementation of the policy, which I think is a little unclear. Unless are we required to ratify annually or something like that? So that would be like an annual thing.
No, that's a good question. I think when we review sort of a more complete policy that will cover everybody, we should make sure we address those. And I agree with, because right now our practice has been get it to everybody as soon as new appointments are made. So that everybody reviews it, but adding the training component in there, I think on an annual basis, and maybe even go above and beyond what the state says. If certain volunteers are only supposed to take it every 5 years, we'll just say every year and just
Yeah.
make sure that it's top of
It
mind.
seems like this is the town government equivalent of like the fire department doing CPR training annually, because you think you remember it because you've done it 5 years in a row, but if you skip 3 years, you have forgotten important parts.
Bart,
And David, I think this will resonate with you. It's like annual HIPAA training,
what's that, Bart?
which we have to do every year. And so it seems to me, even if it becomes routine, if you do it 10 years in a row, by the 10th year, you should know it pretty well.
I think that being routine would be the goal, actually.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Then, after 10 years, the quiz, the answers are C, C, B, A, B, C, D, D.
No, Jay's AI program will change the order up every year for us.
That's right.
Evil teachers.
Brad, I just want to say one thing to you. I thank you at candidates night for bringing that up, the ethics concerns that you had. And I still do, and everyone else here said that too. It is important for citizens to be engaged in the process in the place that they live in. So, and thank you for being engaged. And
I appreciate that, Lisa. I appreciate that.
Please let us know, and otherwise let us know if we're not.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Lisa and Adam, as well, those comments from both of you. And I think one thing that I mentioned this before, would be really great to see is like, I think that Josh is working on this, is to just have a clear sense of how these are heard, like what someone can expect when submitting an ethics complaint, how that works, what they should expect, what they shouldn't expect, that sort of thing. I mean, also on Chelsea, I think has her hands up as well, so just want to point that out.
Chelsea, go ahead.
Hi,
Hi.
there we go. Excuse me, sorry. My lighting is bad, but here I am. So I just wanted to hop on, and I appreciate the conversation tonight. I am hopeful that the select board will sort of make some clear statements here, right? Because even these communications from the state and the lawyer that are attached to this meeting are sort of squishy, as some of the people in some of these offices would like to call things. And essentially what I mean by that is like our town lawyer said that this is like a very fine line, right? And that this, whether it's a sketch plan review or a site plan review, determines whether or not it's an official act or action. I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, but I think the decision and sort of the expectation needs to be set by the select board of like Bradley said, what do you expect? So if the town lawyer is giving you this kind of like back and forth of a site plan versus a sketch plan, well, what's your perception of a conflict of interest or what's not? And the last meeting, it really seemed like the sort of overall feeling was just play it safe, right? Like, don't take that risk. If something can happen without your participation, why even risk it? And I think that this is such a sort of fine line here tonight that the definition from the 2023 version of ethics said that it's any legislative, administrative, or quasi-judicial act by a member of a public board. So there was a lot of focus on quasi-judicial, and this isn't quasi-judicial because no decision was made. However, if it's not quasi-judicial, then what is it? It can't be nothing. Like, it's something, right? It has meaning. It's a thing that the DRB does. So I guess I would consider it maybe administrative if you're not going to consider it quasi-judicial. So there's a lot of room for this to be 100% interpreted as an official act or action. And some of the things that you were mentioning, like the taxes and this and that, Josh definitely covered them with it can't be a interest greater than any member of the community. But furthermore, it also is like ministerial things, essentially something that you're not making any judgment call in, like it's required by law. That's ministerial things. So those things are sort of exempt from this. But none of the stuff that happened that evening was ministerial. And I think the importance of expectations being really clear and set is that this isn't probably the end of this condo association pursuing this situation, right? So what does the select board consider a official act? What do they consider a conflict of interest? Like, this is going to come up again, likely in the very like acute context of this condo association's development. But as Bradley said, there's other things happening at the DRB level that are concerning. The town lawyer's letter that said he probably should have recused himself just because of being a property abutter. That came up recently at another DRB hearing where a property abutter didn't recuse themselves. So that's why I feel like there needs to be some really clear expectations set by you guys, the select board, the people whom are sort of in charge of this, because currently the individual in the town staff that they're looking to has very strong opinions about the fact that ethics only matters if you're being bribed with a bag of money. And that's really concerning to me.
I mean, I guess, what would you like to see come out of this then? Because I mean, there is a change in policy between the policy we were under and what we have going forward. So I think a lot of our, we're using that, I think personally anyway, and I view us using that as kind of facilitating an inflection point where we emphasize training and compliance moving forward and awareness of all our committee members. And recognizing that we haven't emphasized that enough in the past. But as far as looking back, if that's not satisfactory to remedy the situation, is learning from this and retraining, what do you think is a reasonable course of action then to mitigate this specific situation and issues with the specific people that you're talking about, if the additional training and compliance moving forward isn't that solution?
I guess, well, so I'll speak to that. My opinion is that I'm obviously like not the select board. I can't kind of come to the decision of what decision you should make. I think that
Well, you can give us a recommendation of what you think, because what we've decided you don't like. So if you want something different, I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot. Like I'm genuinely curious, like, what do you think we should do? Because I was trying to look forward and I don't want to punish anyone moving backwards. I want to make people, recognize the conflicts moving forward and deal with that in a more productive way. So if that's not satisfactory to you, or I'm assuming it's also not satisfactory to other people also, because you're probably not alone, what else would be needed, in your mind? And again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just looking for ideas.
And maybe take your time, if you want to follow up
Or
at
you
a
can-
later date, we'll still be
Sure.
wrestling with this.
That's also a good point,
Yeah, I think I will definitely follow up with that. I'm not saying that like you said, you don't want to punish actions in the past, but I think it's really important for you to, I'll say this because this is sort of on my mind right now. I think it's really important. I understand like not wanting to punish somebody for actions in the past or vilify people for what they did if they're trying to do better. I can see that perspective. At the same time, I want you to give some thought to whether or not these individuals are trying to do better, whether or not they actually feel that anything was done wrong. Because if somebody has done something and it's decided like you need to do better, right? Like kind of by this select board, you set these standards of, well, we think that you should recuse yourself, or this is when you should recuse yourself. These are these situations. Here's some pretty clear examples, right? We have some in front of us right now. And those individuals make the choice to stand very strong and steadfast in that they didn't do anything wrong. That's concerning to me, because then my confidence in their ability to learn and grow and change and adhere to these sort of things is very wavering.
Sorry. I was just going to ask what was sort of a rhetorical question, but is really not, about how many boards and commissions and committees we have. I will say they show up on pages 8 and 9 of the town report, and that's in the neighborhood of 15. And then we have a number of appointed town officials in the neighborhood and appointed volunteers in a neighborhood of 20 to 25 on pages 6 and 7. And then elected town officials on page 4. And my point of this is that some of these, the boards, commissions, and committees, their conflicts are probably going to be explicit and specific to the focus of their committee or commission. And I'm going to guess we're not going to write details for each board, committee, or commission. So the art perhaps is how to write something that is general enough but explicit enough to embrace all of those volunteers, boards, committees, and commissions, which on the face of it are somewhat numerous and diverse. You know, the fireworks committee might be like, it's some of the stuff we've taken away about financial conflict of interest. You have to follow a procurement policy. So it also, I think, has to be embedded in the context of the other policies we have in place that are intended to avoid conflict and malfeasance, like the procurement policy.
You know, I'm just gonna think out loud without any particular direction.
Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Aaron, did you have something quick, or can you go after Lisa?
I'll go after Lisa.
Okay, thanks. I just didn't know if you wanted to tell us the curtains were on fire behind us or something. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, feel free to butt in. You know, generally, if a person's going to do something unethical, you stand to gain from it.
Mhm.
It's that, I think, is a fact, and it's either monetary, or it's an advantage over someone else, or it's status, or it's something else that they
Power.
value. Yeah, wealth. So if we ask questions, the obvious questions maybe, how do you benefit from this, or do you benefit from this? You know, in the beginning of a hearing, that's a question that I'd like to hear the answer to from each of the people with a stake in the outcome. And that could be very revealing. It's not required that we do that under the ethics policy. I don't think there's any instruction for us to do that. And that might be one way we can just lay it on the table, and whatever else other people put on the table, there it is. And then we move on. That would be something I'd suggest.
Aaron, go ahead.
Hey, so I usually try to mind my own business, but I am a member of this town. And I've been doing this MMC TV thing for a long time, and I've been filming these types of meetings for many years at this point. And I will tell you that in other towns, people recuse themselves ad nauseum, like I'm an abutter, I'm on this board, I'm on that board. I mean, it just happens, like they just spit it out constantly all throughout the meetings. It's not hard to do, and they do it and they move on with their discussions. And it just seems like it's an easy thing to do. Also, every meeting is warned, and it's warned because why? I mean, like, as board members, you're not really supposed to get together and talk about board business outside of meetings. You're supposed to do it in the warned meeting, and it's a warned meeting. And whether or not you're making a decision, your discussion is important, that it is in the public. And why is that? Like, if part of this discussion is to ask why, is it more important if you're making a decision or not? And it seems to me the very importance is that you're actually meeting and talking. So there's that. And then my other point is that, I'm glad that people like Bradley and Chelsea are here talking and bringing these points up. This is fantastic. But I'm also super glad that people like Matt, who are young, energetic, fantastic community members, are stepping up. And he's been active in the Planning Commission and now the DRB, and it's awesome. And I kind of hate to see him raked over the coals for this. So anyway, there's my 2 cents. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Aaron. Any final thoughts? To be continued.
And I do think that the to be continued part is the
key.
It's the perfect way to wrap this up.
Chelsea, go ahead.
Sorry. the lowering the hand and the unmuting it at the same time is a challenge. I just had one final sort of, I guess, question. In addition to my mutual interest in seeing that memo from Tyler that Bradley mentioned, because I'd like to sort of see where these conclusions were drawn from. I would also be interested in a little bit more information about, like if possible, I guess the distinction that's being made between purchasing a subdivided lot and a boundary line adjustment, simply because that's sort of some of the reasoning behind the opinion that like these are very different, and this, you know, I whether or not somebody knew something prior or whatnot, because my understanding may be incorrect. And my understanding is simply that the boundary line adjustment means that, you know, here's my land and here's yours, and some of mine absorbs yours by the boundary line adjusting into yours. So it's essentially like the ability to purchase land from an abutting landowner without the hassle of going through a subdivision, versus purchasing that subdivided lot and then having to, you know, make it one with your own or treat it as its own. So I would personally like to just know that difference or distinction, and how that is factored into like the relevance of the potential conflict. And this might mean I just need to do my own research or talk to the planning and zoning office, but I just wanted to mention it because perhaps the select board would also like to consider that distinction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say real quick, I want to say real quick, appreciate your time taking up this issue and discussing this. That's all. Thank you.
And Bradley, thank you for bringing us to our attention. I think this is a conversation that needs to be had, and I think we're better as a town going forward, having had these conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Any final thoughts before we move on? Moving on. Okay. Consideration of setting a hearing date for the fiscal year 26 capital plan.
So I did ask Connie to be present this evening in case there were any detailed questions in the capital plan, but this is the plan you've seen sort of in draft form as we've discussed the budget for FY26. So we've had it, we've referenced it a few times. We did make some changes to it this year based on the unique budget challenges that we had this year with a lack of unassigned funds due to flooding. So some of the adjustments that we made on the plan were to put less money into certain reserve funds this fiscal year, knowing that we'll have to make up for that in future fiscal years. The question before the board this evening is to warn a hearing for the plan, which would be a time that we would properly notice the hearing and then come back for questions from the select board, public comment, to then finalize the capital plan. And again, the capital plan is essentially our plan for the next 5 to 15 years for capital purchases and how we pay for those.
Questions, comments? You ready for a motion?
Josh, how much time is needed between now and this date that we're gonna name?
Right, so we need to have, we need to have a 15 days notice. So the earliest we could set the hearing for would be March 17th. That gives us time to get the notice out properly for the meeting.
It is a regularly scheduled meeting.
Yep, yeah, we would usually do it during a regularly scheduled meeting.
Is that enough time for you?
To warn it, yeah, I mean, Connie's already done the bulk of the work of getting the plan, which the draft is included in the agenda this evening or in the packet this evening. So that's all set to go. I just need to send notice to the paper to get it published next week so that we've got time, and then post it in the regular places. As far as time in the meeting, it sort of depends on, you know, how deep into it board members want to go or how many questions we want to ask. I've seen it be 10 or 15 minutes, but it can also take 45 minutes if there's a certain topic or two that we really want to drill down on.
Okay. I mean, we have talked previously about the fire department truck purchase plan and all that stuff and the reshuffling there. And so that one specific item, it seems like we could burn up hours ahead of time and in a meeting. So trying to figure out how we reconcile. And that's a month away. I don't have
Yeah,
we're not
so.
gonna answer on that. So we're gonna have to revise this.
And we look at it every single year, and there's always changes, so like,
I think there is no way we're gonna kick this capital plan down the road far enough to answer that question, so we should just. Get it out.
probably not, yeah.
Okay.
We should make sure we adopt it, and I think, Connie, how did you account? Do you recall off the top of your head how you accounted for the fire truck and the capital plan? I think we removed engine 1 maybe in this version.
Correct.
So we've stuck with the current purchase that we've already, paid some money on for the rescue truck with water, remove engine 1. But if after, we say we take 6 months to review it, we come back with we need engine 1, and here's the current configuration. We can make edits and updates to that plan, and then that can be adopted in the next year.
So
And
we
then-
would want information on that. Because we start working on the capital plan the same time we start working on the budget, and I think engine 1 was scheduled for fiscal year 27 for the chassis. I don't
I
have
think
it in
so.
front of me. Yeah, so I mean, we definitely need to know where we're going with engine 1 by next fall. Or it has to get pushed out. Right now, it's not on there at all.
Right.
Can I make one really, really nitpicky
Of course.
suggestion, County? And I really apologize.
But
But under Jaws of Life, we don't have Jaws of Life. We have extrication tools. Jaws of Life are like Saran wrap. We have the competing brands. Plastic cling wrap or whatever, you know what I mean? So Jaws of Life is a trademarked brand name.
Jaws, you said Jaws.
So
extrication equipment.
And we have Jaws of Life 1 and 2, but one of them isn't even a Jaws of Life, it's a spreader, so it does the opposite. So,
Okay, well, you're gonna have to let me know which is which, and I can update that for what we put forward in a couple of weeks. I only go by what department heads tell me.
okay, I will, well, let's just call them extrication tools and we'll live with that for now. That's that small
For
steps.
both of them. Okay.
Thank you. Watch, I'm gonna say that and next time we'll buy the Hearst ones and they will be Jaws of Life and we'll have to. eat my weight.
It is better to say you're gonna buy a car and then have the option for a Ford or a Chevy than say you're gonna buy a Ford and then buy a Chevy.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
let's keep it generic.
Thank you, Connie.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
Wait, there's a comment from Caitlin.
I could just say it out loud if you want. I know I've been very vocal about this, so I just want to say, I think where we landed with the budget, with the information that we have today was good for this year and this budget approval. So I'm, not that it matters, but I like where we landed.
Okay, thank you for that.
Back next year.
Are we ready for a motion? Line 120.
Oh, I do.
427.
I move to set a hearing date of Monday, March 17th, 2025 for the FY 26 capital plan for the town of Richmond, Vermont.
Thank you, Adam.
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, I.
David, I. Okay, review. Thank you, Connie. Review of requests by the town center tenants to renew their leases.
Does anyone have objections to any of them?
I mean, I can speak to this as member of the town center and library committee, and this is the first, I mean, I saw it in the packet on Friday. It's the first time seeing it, and I think that's reasonable. I don't think, based on the info we have now as a committee, I think that this is a reasonable action, and I don't think we're looking to or on a trajectory to change anything about this building that would make these leases need to be modified within the next 2 years. So.
Thank you, Adam.
So there's no impact on the report.
But presumably within the leases themselves, there is a severability clause in case that such circumstances came to pass.
Yeah, I'd have to check and see if there's I know there's a clause in there about if the building undergoes a major renovation, that they would have to move out. I'd have to review it more closely to see if there's a complete, like, within a certain number of days' notice, could we remove a tenant because we have other plans for the building? But I can look into that. That's a good.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't, I think that's worth looking into for future leases. At this point, we would need to do a bond vote, and that we would need to do the work to get to a bond vote, find a contractor and start work to make that a necessity. And just by function of where we're at, we couldn't even get to a bond vote until next town meeting again. So I think that we are best case scenario many years out.
And that is actually covered in the leases. That's sort of the idea. If we have major renovations, you might need to relocate with a certain number of days' notice.
Yeah.
Because when we first put these leases together 4 years ago, we were considering, we could get to a bond vote anytime now. So similar to the Trails Committee, these things take time, and we've baked that into the leases.
I only observed we might want to substitute a different term than extensive. Which is.
So, yeah, I'd have to read to see the
Okay.
exact, but I think that there was I'll look at that again. We'll have if there's anything you want to review, these don't actually renew or end until the end of June, but they had 90 days to give us notice. So this is good. I'll make some revisions, come back with some track changes, and then we can have comments on the specific language at the next meeting.
My only point is that we might at some point approach this piecemeal, so we're gonna want to do that part of the building, but not that part. So what does extensive mean? Like, I think I'd be more circumspect about the extent of renovation.
Yeah. And I don't know,
Good joke, but
I don't know if the extensive word is actually in there, but
Okay,
I'll review that, and then we'll have a chance to review it at the next meeting in more detail and make.
really just to capture that idea that it might not be everything all at once, but
it might be.
pieces. Yeah.
Say every time I
Received
add
extension.
one large window in January, my wife considers that an extensive renovation.
This is
Anyway, had to do it. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll come back to the next meeting with some edits to the leases.
Consideration of reducing the number of members on the Town Center and Library Buildings Committee.
I can speak to this too.
Go ahead.
We're a committee of 7 members. We have 5 people. So we were hoping to reduce, we haven't had any interest in the last year. Getting new members.
You have 2 open seats.
We have 2 open seats, and we would like to request that it's reduced to 5 members to facilitate getting a quorum, and also to have the number of members accurately reflect, the realities of where we're at. I would also mention, I saw the email briefly and didn't really look at it. We might actually be a committee of 4 members right now, which would mean we have exactly a quorum. So any one member being absent would mean we can't hold a meeting with a quorum. So
I mean, if you were at 5, you'd be at risk of not having.
I think we have 4 right now. I think one person resigned recently, knowing that this was coming and that we would hopefully get it approved. That said, I think we would obviously be open to raising that number if there's interest. So if we fill a vacant seat and then there is more interest, we would gladly raise the request that the number go up again. I don't think we're not setting it going down, but we do want the number that to accurately reflect.
David Despard, I move to reduce the size of the Town Center and Library Buildings Committee from 7 members to 5 members.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling a motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, abstain.
Lisa, aye.
Art, aye.
It's all up to me.
Not a recusal.
Oh, right.
Refuse to.
David, aye.
Motion carries.
That is a conflict, isn't it? I don't know.
I am Master.
I am on the committee, so I'm not voting on it. Is that?
Yeah. That seems.
I will say that one of the developments that, just for everyone knows this year, but I think have been other committees too that are operating on a quorum being a majority of the members' membership, and that is not accurate. there's a current, it was a total of, or a majority of the seats on the member. On the committee. So if we have 4 now and there's 7, we have exactly a quorum, so any one person, so. For any other committees listening, if you're operating that way, it's not how it works.
Are we ready to move on? Next is consideration of approving liquor licenses. Papa McKee's has applied for an outside consumption permit, first-class license, and a third-class license. The mobile station has applied for a second-class liquor license. And a reminder on the definition of each class of liquor license: a first-class license serves beer and wine on site. A second-class license sells beer and wine to be consumed off premises. Third-class license serves spirits on site. And the state of Vermont licenses the Vermont liquor store located in the Richmond market directly. The state licenses tobacco sales, and the municipality does not have a role in these licenses. Any questions?
Yeah, not about that, but the mobile station is really successful.
Yeah. I tried their fried chicken. It's pretty good. It's expensive, but it's good.
Anything that adds to their volume of business is good for them, and I'm not so sure. I think it's starting to get to a congestion point.
The parking lot's usually full.
That and it backs out onto Route 2.
I will say I like when it's empty because it's more convenient for me personally.
Absolutely.
I understand why it's a benefit for them in the town if it's busy.
So, and I mean, I'm with me saying that, how somebody just has to go buy some, beer. I don't know what time of day that's going to be. It could be the only customer they get that hour. Or it could be they're one of 200 people who are going to a festival and they all want beer at the same time. There's this big knot of cars. I don't know. Does it increase traffic to a point that goes beyond their original planning documents?
Time will tell.
And I'm way off topic, but I did see that their charging station is live now.
It goes a parking spot.
2.
Or not. It could be, I mean, ours are increasingly busy over the years.
Yeah.
So people are continuing to use them and buy more electric cars. So I think that they'll probably be used. And now they have fried chicken. You can have a lunch while your car charges. I mean, it can be a whole outing.
If there's any more land available, a hotel.
It's funny you mentioned that, Bart. I had a flat on my plow truck, which is a long story, but anyway, I took the tire off and I brought it down there and pumping it up. And some guy is walking by and he goes, "What'd that cost you? 8 quarters?" I said, "No, it's free." And he goes, "Free? God, I love Vermont." Got in his car and drove away.
Did you walk up?
He had white plates on his car.
On that note, I move to approve an outside consumption permit, first class liquor license and the third class liquor license for LJM Enterprises, Inc., DBA Papa McKee's Pizza.
This is Bart. I will second that.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Bart. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, I.
David, I.
I move to approve a second class liquor license for Summit Stores LLC, DBA The Barn North / Mobile Station.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have a second?
This is Bart. I'll second that.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Bart. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, I.
David, I. They are approved. Sir, consideration of approving the 2025 certificate of highway mileage.
So this is something that we do annually. I'm just going to share screen here real quick. So every year we have to report to the state if there's been any changes to the mileage of town roads, class 1, 2, and 3, as well as class 4 and legal trails. So for instance, and most of the time this is just the same. We did have a couple of years ago when the town lost part of Williams Hill in the consideration of was that actually a town road. So at that time we actually did take some mileage off, but there were no changes in the last year. Other than you'll note here under the new highway section part 2, that there's a note about Route 2 actually gaining 0.033 of a mile due to the realignment of the bridge, the new bridge by the fire station. I will just sort of put a little preview for next year. And Pete and I, actually, as I was reviewing the stormwater map for Southview, I noted that one of the roads seemed really short. And I talked to Pete and he said, oh yeah, no, that goes all the way to the end. So he went through and looked at, he found a couple of discrepancies that looked like they've been on the map for a while. It amounted to maybe a half mile. So we talked with the people who are in charge of the mileage at the state, kind of went over a few discrepancies. They explained sort of their methodology, their process. And to make any changes, we'd have to kind of go back and look at like the original documents that when we adopted the road. We didn't have time to do that. This has to be in by the 20th. It does affect some funding that comes to the town, but a half mile is not going to make a crazy amount of difference. But Pete and I have about 3 roads to look into to see if we can find the original documents, which might gain us a small amount of mileage this time next year. But so just a little preview on some due diligence for next year.
How much did you say that the bridge, the new bridge added?
0.033 of a mile. So very minimal.
Which is surprising because it cuts the corner. I would have thought it would have knocked a little off.
And I'm going with the state engineer.
Yeah.
This one, David.
None of us measured.
And that doesn't affect any of our funding because the funding is all about, I think it's our class 2 and 3 roads that we get some state highway aid on every year, that the roads that we're responsible to maintain. I think the state actually added that into the certificate when they sent it to me. Just I think they wanted it noted officially, and so we'll do that.
Are we ready for a motion?
This is Bart. I move to approve the 2025 certificate of highway mileage for the town of Richmond.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Any further discussion?
I just have one quick question. So the state highway is obviously Route 2.
Yes.
So they don't do anything with 89, like it doesn't even come on our radar at all, right?
On the mileage certificate, no, I mean, I guess. I honestly, I've never seen Route 2 on the certificate until they made a change. And then as you see, it was just sort of noted. So the part 1 up here is the section about the town roads, right? So that's where when we had to change to Williams Hill, I think it was a class 4 road, we reduced the amount of mileage. Everything else stays the same. So this here just talked, and the state put that in here, they pre-filled it to talk about I-89, or I'm sorry, Route 2 over 89. Because yeah, class 1 highway, I think that would only be like, that might be Route 2, but some towns have taken over the state road within their municipality. So that might be a point when we would report that road as part of our coverage, because then we would be responsible for maintenance of that road. So I don't know where I-89 falls here. I'm not even sure what class they would be.
You don't touch it at all, so it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's probably I don't think they put an option for us to take it over.
We don't even have the on and off ramps in our jurisdiction.
But even the on and off ramps, I think, are maintained by the state. Until and even that, they off ramp onto Route 2, which is also maintained by the state. So there's really not much of a line there.
We just respond to emergency.
We do, yeah, we are responsible for
Yeah.
The normal stuff the state.
Well, that was kind of what was motivating me is, obviously the funding for the fire department is all based on taxes now. So if we were to push for, we obviously respond to an undue amount of calls on highways compared to towns that don't have highways. And so having that noted somewhere, obviously the state knows that, so it'll be part of the conversation.
It'd be great if there was some state funding for fire department response rather than just maybe
And police coverage.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at this point, I don't know.
Not
Stormwater.
in my breath.
No, right.
Okay, calling.
You guys approved that already, right?
I don't think we voted
Oh, no,
on
you
it.
didn't. Okay.
Calling motion to a vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
There was a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry,
Bart made it,
you're
Adam
taking better
seconded
notes
it.
than me.
Update regarding posting roads in the spring. Included in the packet is a letter from the state of Vermont regarding posting roads to prohibit overweight trucks during mud season, which really isn't that far away. It states that the rule must be filed with the select board and posted in 2 public places. Consider this agenda item the filing of the rule with the select board. Pete has already posted the rule in 2 public places. Pete will post roads when appropriate. Any questions on that? Okay. Consideration of approving changes to the discretionary funding policy. You buying up the track changes?
Yeah. So this came up at the budget meeting as a suggestion that maybe we ask organizations that are funded to provide an update maybe every 6 months about their services and how they affect Richmond. I figured it seemed like a pretty easy change. We might as well get ahead of it because it'll be August before we know it, and we'll be sending this out to organizations and we will have forgotten to make the change. So when do we at least start the conversation?
My only comment, David, is while we addressed this, I think eloquently and succinctly on the bottom of section 4 about reporting. It seems to me we might also include it in the request that it says that they will agree to do it. So I don't think we modify it and say they agree to sort of cut and paste that into an agreement when they apply.
Closer to agreement when they apply. So in this part of it, where there's.
Yeah, so in
application?
this is their request.
Yeah,
So I'm contemplating a future state in which, well, I never agreed to submit anything, right?
okay, yeah, let me see if we can find a good spot in here for a, maybe just before they sign it, if there's a spot that
Yes.
says, please make sure you adhere to all the rules above, including the portion about.
Yeah, that
Something
paragraph
like
right
that. It's just basically then they attest to, like, they can't claim that they didn't know they were supposed to submit something, and they would affirmatively say, I'm gonna submit information on these 2 dates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense? to
It does.
everybody?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Good idea. Otherwise, it's like a lot of things, it doesn't happen.
And is it reasonable to do a motion that we approve it with that modification not yet seen?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or you want to just bring it back next
So you
time?
just reference this one here, which is,
Or do you want to bring it back?
Bring it back, and that way you guys make sure it's where you want it and it's stated the way you want it. It'll take, that'll be an easy one to do. That's a pretty easy update.
Okay. Consideration of approving the certificate of no appeal or suit pending for the 2024 grant list.
So our assessor has certified that there's,
what's the danger?
well, yeah, so once you finalize the grant list, there could be appeals or somebody could take you to court for like, well, that's not the proper value of my house. So there are no more, I think there were initially a couple appeals maybe, but everything has been satisfied and there's no appeals or any suits pending. So we can officially finalize the grant list and know that it's done for 24, just in time to get ready for 25.
Yeah, so buyouts are settled.
Well, no, so that would be a little different. That would be
That was, how could it?
yeah, no, I think this would be like somebody would say, well, you value my property at this amount as of April 1st, and I think it's actually less, and they would appeal. And if the appeal doesn't satisfy them, they could take it to court. And then if there was still a case pending, then we wouldn't be able to sign the certificate until that was settled. This is saying that everything for the grant list as of April 1st of last year is finalized. There's still options for people to ask for tax abatement, or they could look at things if they lost, a significant amount of flooding. There's still options for that. And then, and also a lot of that would go towards this next one, because if you got damaged in the 24 flood, that was after the April 1st deadline to set the property value. So I think that could still go to tax abatement for this year, but you couldn't adjust your grand list value until the next year. I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're backing up on that. But right now for April 1st, 2024, our assessor is certified that we are good to go on this.
Ready for a motion?
Yep, this is Bart. I move to certify that there are no appeals or suits pending related to the April 1st, 2024 grand list for the town of Richmond.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I. Moving on to purchase orders.
I move to approve purchase order number 4913 to Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District in the amount of $2,201,760.72 for education taxes.
Thank you, Adam. We have a second.
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa.
We have our obligatory statement that we don't control this, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, we collect it and we pass it along. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 3rd?
Mr. Chairman, so moved as written.
Now, do we want to do these independently or can we do them all at one?
Any complaints? Yeah, all in one.
Okay.
So that's February 3rd, February 8th, and February 10th.
Yes.
It's Bart, I will second that motion.
So did anybody see any changes that need to be made to those draft minutes? Okay, hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. This is a motion to approve the draft minutes of February 3rd, February 8th, and February 10th.
I wasn't here for two of those, so I understand.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
Still passes.
Just barely would.
And can I have a motion to approve the warrants?
This is Bart, motion to approve the warrants as presented.
Thank you, Bart. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Any question on the warrants? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I. The warrants are approved. So items for next agenda, discretionary spending, the ethics policy, what else?
There's a number of things. I can give you a list if you want.
I just want to make sure we're not forgetting.
Yeah.
something.
I mean,
You've got the list, we already got the list. Then.
what's that?
If you've got a list, then we get a list.
Sure, I can, or yeah, there'll be plenty of things. to
Can you give us a list in order with time amounts on it?
That's sort of like that.
Kind of like it looks like.
It'll look like that in 2 weeks. Right now, it's not quite that formalized. I keep a lot of notes.
Are we ready to move on to executive sessions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion for those.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the, I don't have the exact motion in front of me, but,
Ready with
so
that?
that there's no injury to anyone, yeah.
Oh, we can get this, so we get
Right.
it. Laura's got it. Okay. So it's just important to get it correct.
This is Bart, I move to find that premature knowledge about a personnel issue. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I move to find that premature public knowledge about police department hiring would cause the town or the person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
Adam, second.
Just move the other part.
So we need to vote on
vote.
this. So calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
David Bart again to move that we enter into executive session to discuss police department hiring under the provisions of 1 VSA 313A3 of the Vermont statutes, and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into this executive session.
Thank you, Bart. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I. We are in executive session.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
How long are you expected to be in executive session? And I assume we wait, or are you moving out, or do you shut the
Yeah, we're
microphones off?
moving out. This one
Stays on.
probably not more than 10 minutes. I'm guessing 10 minutes.
And then we have two more, so we basically come back
Twice.
and do two more.
Come back in and redo this process and vote on each one individually.
Yeah.
There will be a lot of dead air.
Okay,
during-
I'll wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have discussion of a personnel issue. We're gonna wait till Adam comes back.
I think we can vote with the quorum
Yeah,
of three here.
We can do all the.
Uh, Thank you. David, this is Bart. I move to find that premature knowledge about the evaluation of a public officer would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Lisa, second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
David, this is Bart. I move that we enter into executive session to discuss the evaluation of a public officer under the provision of 1 VSA 313A3 of the Vermont statutes, and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into this executive session.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Lisa, second?
Hey, Lisa, calling the motion to a vote.
Aye, Lisa?
Aye.
Bard? Aye. David?
Okay, once more. So I'm reading this last one here. This is Bart. I move to find that premature knowledge about the evaluation of a public officer would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second? Thank you, Adam. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye. I move that we enter into executive session, to discuss the evaluation of a public officer and the provision of 1 VSA 313A3 of the Vermont statutes, and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session.
Lisa, I'll second.
Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye.
David, aye.
Point of order, how long will this one be? If you know.
This one might take a while. This one will probably take at least a half hour.
Okay. And is there any action to come out of the other two?
No. No, those are just informational updates.
Okay.
Adjourning or?
Yeah, I think all that's left is motion to adjourn, is that?
Yeah. 10:44 PM.
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have a
Bart,
second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. Motion to adjourn made by Lisa, seconded by Bard. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Adam, I.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye.
David, aye. We are adjourned, 10:44 PM. Thank you, everybody.